Hello, welcome. So good to see everybody. And it's a grim day for war in Europe today. And Goldster's thoughts are with everybody involved. It's a dreadful business, but we will not be dejected. And today's inside story is even more relevant than I had thought. Now, I want you to take a look at our guest sitting very politely, waiting whilst I talk, and check out how she's sitting. Look at her facial expressions. The setting she's chosen, the slump or the uprightness of her shoulders, and what does it all mean? Now, as striking as she might be, my guest is not a model for Vogue magazine. Far from it, her work is the direct opposite to glamour, and the stakes have been much, much higher. Now, in a few minutes, she is going to set us all with a competition of which the winner will receive a signed copy of her book, which is entitled You're Lying, Secrets from an Expert Military Interrogator to Spot the Lies and Get to the Truth. Yes, she cut her teeth on interrogating terrorists in the infamous American Guantanamo Bay detention camp in Cuba after the 9/11 attacks in September 2001. She went on to teach those techniques with the American defense and intelligence communities. And now she runs a fantastic company, the Congruency Group, which teaches anyone from any walk of life how to tell if someone is lying, a loved one, a salesperson, a two-faced boss, a teenager fallen in with the wrong crowd. All of us face lies every day of our life. So welcome Lena Sisco to Goldster Inside Story.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction.
Well, it's 7 o'clock in the morning where you are, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's very early.
Yeah, everybody's getting up early. Now, in a couple of minutes, you're going to tell us 3 brief things to our wonderful audience, who can then guess which is the truth and which is the lie. But and then you're going to sign a copy of your book and send it off to the winner, which Stephanie is going to pick out of a hat at the end. But I want to let them get to know you a bit. So first up, given where we are today and the wars that you've been involved in, Ukraine, what are your thoughts?
We knew it was coming. You could see the writing on the wall. So in fact, my husband, who's a military member still, called the day that Russia would invade.
He knew, did he guess, or was he privy to the intelligence?
He both, I think. It was a little bit of luck, a little bit of knowledge, but he's like, you know what, my gut feeling is the 23rd. Yeah, writing was on the wall. And, you know, I like to say when you're hearing news, or if you're in a conversation with someone, and you get that gut feeling, and it sounds like a duck, it walks like a duck, it's a duck, it's probably going to happen. Yeah.
It's so, and just to, I mean, you sort of embarked after 9/11 on your career, and when all of that happened, do you get the same feeling today that it's all coming round again?
History repeats itself. So I used to be a former archaeologist, and so I had my life was all about history and academia, and it really does repeat itself. You know, when everything kind of settled down after 9/11, I thought it's just a matter of years until it happens again. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't, obviously, but history does repeat itself.
And when Vladimir Putin was on the television saying categorically he was not going to invade Ukraine, could you tell he was lying?
So there's a little bit of embellishment, right? I have a saying, it's liars convince, truth tellers convey. And when I feel that somebody is just working really hard to convince me of something, it's probably because they're trying to convince themselves. And it's probably because it's a lie and they don't believe it. So there was a lot of convincing techniques in there, and we can get into talking about them later. So I was like, you know what? This is an oversell. This isn't truthful.
Yeah, when they're a bit like a salesman trying to sell you something too hard. But you say in the book that you're a 5'4" Italian that comes from Rhode Island. You're not a strapping 6-footer. You weigh 125 pounds, which is 9 stone here across in the pond. And you set out to be an archaeologist, as you just said. Now, archaeology is about old things that don't move, and you're doing with very live things that move a lot. So what happened?
Oh my gosh. So when I saw Indiana Jones, I thought, oh, that's my world. I mean, I was in love with Harrison Ford at the time, but I said, I'm going to become an archaeologist because my life is about adventure. I wanted adventure. I want to study every culture. I want to visit every country. And so I became an archaeologist and I lived out my life dream. But I thought as I was digging overseas in beautiful Italy and Greece, I thought, this is amazing. But I don't know, I just don't feel like I'm working out my life's purpose here. And so when the military thing came to me, it was on a complete whim. And my first gut reaction was like, absolutely not. This is not who I am. But I just didn't feel that, being an archaeologist was who I was supposed to be. So I was like, well, let me just try this out. And it was the best decision I made. I really fell into a career that I love. You can say I discovered my why of to keeping the world safe.
Mm-hmm. So that is fascinating. That gives us embeds with us who you are, and we've seen you move around and look at us and everything like that. So now you're going to tell us three things,
yes,
and one of them is a lie. Mm-hmm. And can our audience try to guess which one is the lie? Stephanie will collate it and pull the winner out of the hat, because I hope many of you get it right. So off you go.
All right, off I go. I'm going to look in the camera. Yeah. I once broke somebody's jaw with a roundhouse kick. During COVID, I started a PhD program in psychology, and I used to feed grapes to a red panda.
Great. Let's just say that once more, and I will put them down. I've typed them out. One of those is a lie, right?
One of
I've typed them out, and I'll put them into the chat. So off you go again.
Okay, so number one is I once broke somebody's jaw with a roundhouse kick. Number two is during COVID, I started a PhD program in psychology. And number three is I used to feed grapes to a red panda.
Okay, that is now going to go into the chat. And please send in your comments, send in your questions to Lena. Also send in a guess of which one of those three is the lie. Now, and if you want to be anonymous with that one, you can give yourself a code name and tell us, like 007 or something like that.
I love it.
I'm just going to put this in as much. I haven't given it away. I think that'll do. Yes. Okay. Right. Now, tell us about Guantanamo, because we've heard a lot about it over many, many years. That was your first interrogation, big job, was it? Yeah, tell us about it.
So I'll tell you, when I left Guantanamo and I came back, and I would hear these stories, and people would come up to me and talk about this torture, right, that would happen, and say that we torture detainees in Gitmo. And it used to infuriate me because I was there, from August to December. I lived there. I interrogated almost every day. I was in the camp. I was in the prison. I was all over the island. And I'm like, this is really bizarre. People are telling me what happened there, but they weren't there, And so when I think back, when we were in Guantanamo, I arrived the day, like I flew in. I wasn't there at the start. I arrived the day that we were transferring all the detainees from Camp X-Ray to Camp Delta, the brand new prison. And it was chaos, right? But you're in a prison. It's the same type if you had a prison over where you are in the United States. But when I was going into interrogations, I was bringing tea, books, movies. I was taking requests. I was doing everything possible to make their life a little more comfortable, because I have a motto, and my motto rings true. If you want the truth from somebody, you have to get them to want to tell it to you. So what do? You have to build rapport. You have to treat people with respect. And I came up with a method with 6 core competencies that I still teach law enforcement, federal and state today, in interviewing and interrogation tactics, that always got me what I wanted, which was the truth, which was intelligence information. And so when I came back and I had all these reports and people were saying, oh, all the atrocities that happened there, I'm scratching my head going, did this happen? Like, how could it happen? I was right there. How on earth could this happen with me not noticing? And still to this day, and we have the news outlets. I don't trust them. And it's unfortunate because if you were in Guantanamo with me, you would have seen what it was really like to come into an interrogation room, bringing incentive items, building rapport, and working nonstop 24/7 to try to get the truth and stop attacks.
But I mean, you mentioned when you first went in, the dreadful conditions that you then forgot about. You got used to this overwhelming smell of sweat and urine and vomit covered up by lemon air freshener. Why was that allowed to happen?
Gosh, I will never forget that smell hit me in the face. And so when I arrived on the island the first day, I got everybody situated, my team, and then I got a tour of the interrogation booths, which is, you think of a Connex box, right? And we divided them up and those were our interrogation booths. Yeah. And when I walked in we had a brown trailer and a yellow trailer, I think we called them, not many. When I walked into the trailer, I got hit in the face with this smell of just what you said, urine, vomit, body odor. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, what? I can't work in this environment. This is disgusting. And it was just this weird smell. Later, I realized it was a smell of fear. And some people who have smelt it are going to say, oh yeah, she's right. It's metallic. It's this weird smell. It's pungent. And so we would spray lemon fresh Lysol.
Just so when you say the smell of fear, because people write about that a lot.
Yeah.
Is there an actual smell? I mean, do we sweat in a certain way?
So the science behind it baffles me. I don't know. I would assume so, but we are giving off something and it smells so different. It's not body odor. It's so different. It's like that metallic, pungent smell. Yeah. And so what we would do, because a lot of the detainees did have body odor, we would try to freshen the place up. And so you had all those layers of smells with a little bit of lemon fresh scent Lysol on top. But by after my first week there, we had new people coming. And so I was giving the tour and I opened the door to bring them in the interrogation room, the Connex box, the trailer. And they're like, oh, and I'm like, what? I don't smell anything. You just become so numb to it all. You're like, oh, it smells great.
So just to set the scene, there's a trailer, like a sort of movie trailer or a container, something. Yeah. And that's divided into cubicles, is it? Where each of you interrogated one of the prisoners.
Yeah, think of a modular home, right? If a modular home comes in sections. Yeah. And so we would have this section and there was about, I can't remember how many, I want to say 8 interrogation rooms on each side. And they had the guard shack, there was a head there, observation room. So it was pretty big. It was very, very big.
Yeah. So I just want to sort of, David says here, this is on our competition. Hi, Lisa. I think number 1 is a lie. I think number 1 is a lie, but you seem too nice. My wife, Christine, thinks it's number 3. You seem too nice. I guess that's to hit someone and break someone's jaw. There's and Patricia says, although we're going to get to this later, aren't we? But I'll put it in here now. Will a 100% accurate lie detector be developed that could be used in a court of law? We're going to get onto the lie detector thing in just a second, Patricia, so stay with us because all will be revealed. I just want to get into the nature of your prisoners, because these were what we call non-state actors that had, were very much part of the whole terror networks. Young guys, were they? I mean, where did you find your common ground?
Both very young and very old. And the common ground was different for each one of them. And I had to work to find out what it would be that I could connect with them and not have it come across as superficial. So I would connect with some of them, just the fact that we're both stuck in Gitmo right now. We're both in the same place at the same time, the common ground, if that's all I had. And in my book, I write, it was simple as mint tea. If I brought in something and I had, I gave a gesture like, hey, let's have tea together. And or we would have food shipped in from their country, right? Automatically, they're like, it's a sense of familiarity. It relaxes everybody. It's like, wow, look at a nice gesture. It's kind of a quid pro quo thing. So yeah, it depended, all ages.
And the idea that you say of being nice to them, because as you said earlier, what we, the public, think about this whole, war on terror thing is the waterboarding, the Abu Ghraib pictures
Yes.
of all of that sort of thing. But what you're saying is that to get it to work, it actually had to be done the other way around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It may take some more time. It may take a lot of more mental effort, but that is the only way that you're going to get information. The only way.
And there was a guy that the way these interrogation rooms were set out, they had a comfy chair for you and less comfy chairs for the detainees. Tell us how you switched it and what happened.
So we had a cushion chair on wheels. So if we had to scoot to the door, if we whatever, it was nice and comfortable. And the detainees sat in a metal chair because they were in the 3-piece suit, as we call it, which was the handcuffs, and they would be bolted to the floor. So there's a chain that goes from the waist and it just goes straight down to the floor. And so for safety and security, we couldn't put them in a wheelie chair because of this chain. What if they, wheeled over, got caught in the chain, fell? So, we couldn't do that. So we had to make sure they stayed safe. But it was pretty uncomfortable. So a couple of my detainees, very cooperative, very forthcoming. I had one and I never met him before. And he came in the door and I assessed his body language. So the guards had him on side by side. And I looked and he was just kind of slumped over. He was very meek. And he looked up at me and I just smiled. And he smiled back. I'm like, oh, I gotcha. Right. I got a smile. And as soon as he realized he smiled, he scowled. He's like, oh, I can't smile at the enemy, right? The interrogator is my enemy. I'm like, no, come on in. And I just for a split second thought, you know what? I'm going to give him the nice chair. I'll make sure that he's stable. So I locked it down, the wheels, but at least it was comfy. And I switched chairs and I took the metal one. And he was so upset. He's like, no, I can't sit in the nice chair. I won't do it. And I said, please, I want you to be comfortable. Reluctantly, he sits in the chair. Hours later, he's giving me information, very cooperative. We're building rapport together. 3 months later, he gave me such valuable information that I started running him as a source inside the camp and to find out all the counterintelligence stuff that was happening. And one night, as I was finishing up interrogation with my interpreter, he says to me, do you want to know why I gave you all this information and I never lied to you? And I was like, you know what I do? And he said, because that very first day you met me, you gave me a nice chair. And he thought, with that act of kindness, I couldn't lie to you. And I thought, wow, it just took a chair. You just don't know. You don't know. The one little thing you can do for a person could make or break your rapport with them.
Susan Krantz asks, was the fact that you're an attractive younger woman mean that you got under their radar and disarmed them?
Could be. So I will tell you this, because most people think, oh my gosh, you were female. They must have disrespected you. But I was much younger at that time, much younger. And I was a third gender. I never got disrespected. I was more interesting to them. I was in a military uniform. I'm working with men. All my interpreters were mostly male. And yet here I come in, I look like them, but I'm a female and I'm not in their culture. I never got disrespected. I had one detainee out of the hundreds I spoke to say, I can't look at you because you're a female. And I was like, that's fine. You can look at the wall, but you're still going to answer my questions. He was like, yeah, okay.
Kate Hall says, if I were a prisoner, I would expect to be tortured or tricked in an interrogation chamber, even with you smiling. Does it typically, not the example you spoke about, take a long time to convince them that it would not be like that? Does it take a long time?
Every individual is different. Every human is different. And that's, when you get into the work that I do, you can't generalize a population of people. Every single human is different because of your life experiences, your personality, whatever you've got going on in here makes you unique. And so the first, 10 to 30 minutes of every interrogation, when I was getting to know the detainees, I would choose my tactics. If I could be my personality, maybe I had to quiet my personality down. Maybe I needed more incentive items. I had detainees who didn't care. They're like, I don't want anything. I just want you to not try to convince me what I did was wrong. Okay, I'm not going to. Yeah. I would take, and I also wouldn't go into areas that I could not change them. You can't change people, right? So if I was to bring up politics or religion, That's what it's not going to work. Why would they? So I never talked about it. I just talked about what I needed to get, and that was actionable intel.
But was it, I mean, 2 hours or 2 months? I mean, I know that everybody's different. It was both of those, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
And there was the fascinating one about the guy that told you everything about where a camp was and what it was doing, but he wouldn't tell you who the leader was. How did that work?
Oh, I'll never forget his name because he was so funny. UB loved cigarettes. And once we had that rapport, I'm all about, listen, I'm going to make you as comfortable as you can. I'm going to get you your cigarettes. Even though I can't stand the smell of it. So he was smoking cigarettes and he's like, listen, I'm going to be open with you. And I'm going to tell you everything but this one thing. I just can't tell you this one thing because if the brothers find out, then they're going to get on me. Right. And I said, you got it. No worries. So we finished up interrogation. I said, Yubi, I need a couple more questions. I'm going to bring you back in tomorrow. He's like, absolutely. Just make sure you have my cigarettes. I'm like, you got it. And so I leave and my interpreter's like, you need this information. I'm like, oh, we're going to get it tomorrow. And he's like, but he said he wasn't going to give it to you. I said, I got a plan. So the next day comes and I said, listen, we're going to get Yubi talking about all the stuff that we've talked about. It's just, we're going to verify information he's already given us. We're going to let him be relaxed and smoke his cigarettes. And when I feel that his guard is completely dropped, I'm going to slip in the question. And maybe he'll just answer it because we're in this cadence, right? I ask a question, he answers. And my interpreter's looking at me like I'm crazy. He's like, you really think this is going to work? I'm like, what else? What do I got to lose? I don't have anything to lose. So we go in there and it took me 2 hours. 2 hours. And all of a sudden I'm like, and I'm nervous, right? Cause I'm like, when do I ask the question? When should I ask it? I got one chance. This is going to work or it's not going to work. And I just blurted, we were in a cadence and I blurted out the question and he answered it. And after he answered it, he goes like this, ooh. And I'm like, gotcha. And I made a joke out of it, but I wasn't going to hide it. I'm like, I gotcha. I said, Yubi, I had to trick you because I need this information. And he's like, you're tricky. I'm going to warn everybody about you. I'm like, well, why would you do that? I'm like, you better be careful because I'll give you your cigarettes.
But did you, I mean, you know, these are people that were being held without trial, all those things that are against our system, you know, our thing. Did that make you feel uneasy at any stage there that you were?
No, because there's no trial for terrorist attacks. No. Yeah. Now,
and you were convinced that they were all in some way involved.
So if you were in Guantanamo, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was my job to figure out what exactly that was, why you were there and what you were doing. Yeah. Now there's varying degrees. I was there to fight and kill people. Got it. Yeah. Or I was there because it was just a thing to do. And if I didn't do it, I would look bad for my family. Yeah. So there's varying degrees, but if you were there, you were there. And so it was my job to find out what degree to your involvement were you.
Yeah. And were you afraid at all? Were you frightened?
Yeah, I thought I would be. I really did. When I got there, I'm like, oh my God, I'm sitting across in a tiny room from a terrorist, someone who willingly is killing people. I even sat across from the person who was the 20th hijacker, who's doing all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be in a room with this person. Like, what are they going to do to me? But then the first interrogation I had, I'm like, wait a minute, this is just a human. I'm perfectly safe. They're bolted to the floor. If I don't have to have the guards take off their handcuffs, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I feel okay.
Okay, that's a comment came in from my other social media from James Rosen, who was an interrogator in Iraq, and he said he did more than 2,000 hours of interrogations trying to get information on raids that they were doing. He says he loved and hated that job. I'm glad and out mad respect to you, Lena, for doing a tough job during the war. That's one of your peers and colleagues.
Respect goes back to you, definitely. Yeah, or him.
We're going to move on now because you're going to teach us how to tell if somebody is lying. We're going to start by seeing a clip, if Ben has got that ready, of Lance Armstrong, who was the 7 consecutive Tour de France cycle winners on a doping investigation. In 2013, he got caught out. And this is a before and after, isn't it, of when he got caught out. Ben, can we see that?
I'm going to ask you about those now. I'm transitioning to ask you about those. First, do you deny the statements that Miss Andrew attributed to you in the Indiana University Hospital?
100%, absolutely.
Do you also deny what Mr. Andrew said regarding those statements?
100%.
I will start my answer by saying that this is too late. I view this situation as one big lie that I repeated a lot of times.
So tell us, Lena, the before and after on that.
All right. So the before, when Lance was lying, he's asked very bad, but he's asked a yes or no question. And how he answers is 100%, absolutely. But that's his words. Now, if you look at the body language, he's saying 100%, absolutely. So we have two things going on here. Remember what I said earlier, liars convince, truth tellers convey. If you ask a truthful person a yes or no question, they have no problem saying yes or no. They have no problem taking responsibility and accountability for a simple yes and a simple no. There's no need to oversell it. They don't have to convince themselves. They don't feel they have to convince other people. Lance knows he's lying. So it goes into that convince mode. Let me convince this person of my lie. And so you hear that over embellishment. What Lance should have said was a simple yes, right? So there's two things going on. We have the embellishing words, absolutely 100%. And we have the incongruent body language of shaking the head no, as he's saying yes. Now, if you go to the next video, he's asked a yes or no question again.
Yeah.
And how does he answer? A very simple yes,
Yeah.
with a congruent head nod. That's what I'm looking for. So,
okay, so where the body language and the verbal language matches, that's when you've got a truth.
Yes.
And if they don't match, and that's where you do the tells. But you also write about, this fascinated me, about two different hormones that come out. One is called cortisol, and the other one is dopamine. And different people release different hormones when they lie.
Yes. Yeah. So there's two types of liars, right? A regular and a powerful. And a powerful liar is not a good liar. The difference is, in a regular liar, like you and I, we don't like to lie because we're worried about the consequences of a lie. We have to make up a lie. We have to remember the lie. We're worried what's going to happen. We get caught in the lie. And so all this worry releases cortisol, right? It's that fear. And when we're lying and we're regular liars, we have physiological responses to stress, like sweating, rapid heartbeat, rapid pulse, drying out of the mouth, drying out of the eyes, maybe tremoring or shaking. And so I'm going to see the physiological responses and indicators of deception, which is behavioral incongruence, the most accurate. Now, dopamine, right? That goes in a powerful liar. A powerful liar is not thinking about the consequences of getting caught. They're thinking about the reward of the lie. I'm going to get this job. I'm going to hurt this person. I'm going to stay out of prison, right? And that makes you feel good. So cortisol suppressed because the thoughts are positive, the thoughts are good, and dopamine releases. So you don't see those physiological responses to stress. And a lot of times people think, oh, this person's so confident and they're not stressed out, they must be telling me the truth. But if you analyze their words will give them up every single time. They may look calm and confident, but they still not be congruent in their behaviors, and their words will give them up every time.
Now that's because John Elliott, I don't know how much you were across our Prince Andrew here and the Jeffrey Epstein and the big interview he did denying sort of sexual relations and all that sort of thing. But John Elliott says absolutely 100% is what Prince Andrew said, shaking his head in the mateless BBC interview. So if you had been familiar with that, or if we would know, well, I mean, we'll find out eventually. But and Patricia gets onto something I want to get onto now, because we've got a lot of that going on here. Has Lena ever observed an honest politician?
Oh, so it's difficult because here's the deal. You have the stuff they can't talk about. So automatically they're lying by omission. Now, is it a lie or is it just lying by omission? Well, yeah, they're leaving stuff out. Then they have the coaching. Some of them are coached. So they're fighting this duality of, I can't say that and I have to do this. And they're all over the place. So I'd have to say no. You
haven't. But the public not having your skills but also we've got a situation here in Britain, and I think you might have had a little bit of it over there in the States. We certainly, whereas our Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been acknowledged to, he's got a curriculum vitae resume of lying, and he still wins the votes. Is that because he's got dopamine in there? I don't know how much you know about him, but the way he blusters through things, is that the dopamine kicking in?
I don't know a lot about him, but it could be. And so then people look at him and say, oh, he's so confident in his responses, and he's this, and he looks good. And if he looks good, he's got to be telling the truth. So we trust him. Could be.
Yeah, it could. But you did say that you'd look through the people that were talking about the parties that we've now got. That we've had during the lockdown parties there, and you listened to them and watched them. What was your conclusion?
Well, let me just tell you this. I am using it in my training now for deception.
Go on.
Everyone, I was laughing. I watched it super late last night, and I was just laughing because it's just so obvious to me. But all right, commonalities. Everybody who's asked about this so-called Christmas party or whatever it was, never answers a question. Not once. They will talk around it. They'll go over here. They never answer the question that's asked. So that's number one. If you're not going to answer the question, and I'll give you 3 strikes and you're out. I will say, okay, great. Let me ask you that question again. Let me ask you that question again. And then I go to, is there any reason why you want to answer the question? So that was number 1. Everybody refused. Number 2, they all lost their composure. They just fell apart. The stuttering, right? Because it's increasing cortisol. Cortisol's going off. They start to stutter. They're rapid eye blinking. They're getting all nervous and fidgety. And I'm like, how do people believe this? So yeah. And all of them did the same thing.
Can you give us an example of where you are talking to us now, and I'm believing what you're saying, incidentally, of losing your composure? I mean, what would you do if you lost your composure?
I'd start looking away, and I know me, because I don't like to lie. I'm good at it, but I don't like it. I'll start getting breathy, right? Because cortisol is going off and I'm having more oxygen to fight or flight. So you'll hear the breathiness. I'll start itching, maybe fidgeting, just getting all uncomfortable. I'm not acting with my baseline behavior.
Because you don't want to face the question that's coming at you, because your cortisol doesn't want you to.
Yeah, I don't feel good lying, right? So I'm trying to avoid that lie at all possible, because I know I'm going to break down. I know I'm going to start stuttering, stammering. I won't remember things. I know that you're going to be able to see my lie, right? And so what people do is, and you can see the breakdown in composure in that video that I watched last night. Oh my gosh, they were like stutter.
These are all of our, because there's so many of our politicians have been involved in this. Yeah. All of the ones that you saw being interviewed, you could tell were lying.
Oh yeah. And I don't know, I should have saved the clip of exactly what video I watched, but there was a number of them and they all did the same thing. Avoided the question, lost composure.
We've been flooded with it. Suri says, which I think we've addressed, so Putin was not lying about invading Ukraine. He was, except his mind was different. So he thought he was regaining Russia, didn't he? So
yeah.
It's a different mindset.
Bingo.
Emma, can good looks aid when under interrogation? Some people can have direct eye contact and smile. Would that be an advantage when they're being interrogated? If they smile back at you, would you?
So, meaning if I have my detainee is smiling in direct eye contact,
you're both sort of smiling at each other. Yeah.
But I tend to think that they're being honest. Is that the question?
I'm just sort of reading it out. Emma, if Lena answers it to your satisfaction, let us know. If not, give us a follow-up. But yeah, I think Emma's saying if they're smiling at you and being friendly to you, but you could check that out, could you?
Oh yeah. So I check. So and even when I'm interrogating in a different language, which is all in Gitmo, I worked with an interpreter. So for me, it's a little harder to do statement analysis because I'm seeing the body language first, and then I'm getting the translation. And so I have to piece that together. Sometimes I can, but sometimes it's a little bit of time. But this is what I can do is fact check, right? Yeah. So I have a technique where I'm asking repeat questions and control questions to verify what you just told me. And if it doesn't match up, then we have a problem.
Good goodness. I want to move on to Patricia's question now, which brought up the polygraph and the lie detector. You say you've got more trust in reading body language than in a lie detector. Is that right?
So I actually have more trust in words. Words will give out the truth. I say the truth comes out in our words every single time. But let's talk about that polygraph machine. So a polygraph machine is often called a lie detector, but here's the truth behind it. There's no such thing. There is no such thing as a lie detector. It does not exist. There's only one thing in the world that can accurately detect deception, and that is a functional MRI, because what it's doing is looking at the areas of the brain that trigger when you lie. I can't drag an fMRI around to all my interrogations, right? It's pretty much impossible. Not sure people would be willing to get in one. But so there's no such thing as a lie detector. Now, am I analyzing indicators, verbal and nonverbal? Am I looking for behavioral incongruence? Yes. Am I fact checking the information you're giving me? That's going to give me the analysis of the decision that you're not being truthful. But the only way I truly know is when you tell me, yeah, you're right, I lied to you. And even if I don't get that, and I haven't gotten that sometimes, I still go on everything, all the analysis I've done, statement analysis, body language analysis, to say, yeah, my God, I don't think they're being truthful. But a polygraph machine, the reason why it's called a lie detector is because it's based on the assumption that everybody's a regular liar and everybody experiences physiological signs of stress when they lie. But as I just told you, there's two types of liars. So think about this. In our country, we've had numerous spies. We had Anna Montez worked for DIA. We've had Aldrich Ames work for CIA. We've had Robert Hansen work for FBI. Every single, those three individuals lied, right? Took a polygraph and passed it every year. How did they do it? Because going back to that powerful liar, they weren't focused on the consequences of the lie and getting caught. Their focus was on the reward, money, having the connection to the country, whatever it was.
So they have dopamine instead of cortisol. I mean, it put in very simplistic terms. And just to sort of recap on that, the lie detector, where we see in the movies people sort of are clammed up like that, that's to look at blood pressure and heart rate and reaction to the question, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And that's it.
And it's not that, I mean, there's a science. Polygraphers are amazing. That's who you have to watch out for. A good polygrapher can get a confession before they even put a person on a polygraph, right? Because they're trained in these interviewing techniques. But yeah, and a polygrapher, when you get on a polygraph, I've had them. It's not that you get on it and you have no idea what's going to be asked. So the polygrapher baselines you. They're like, hey, these are the questions I'm going to ask you. Because so many people are like, oh my gosh, what if you asked me if I ever cheated on my wife and I cheated on an exam in high school? Am I going to look nervous? I'm like, well, that wasn't the question I asked you. I'm asking you if you're cheating on your wife, not the exam. And so if you're cheating on your wife and you're lying, well, I'll find out.
That's we're going to move now from the world of spying and lie detectors to the civilian world that us innocent people live in. Except I want to ask one question, Susan Francis. Have you ever been wrong in your assessment?
Yes.
Give us a top line.
Oh gosh. Where was I know one of my litigants, I worked on a TV show for 3 years as an expert interrogator, and it was all about trying to decipher who was cheating on who and if the accusations were correct. And one litigant, we usually have like 3 to 4 accusations. I was like, I'm not buying it. I don't think he's being truthful. And then he went on the poly, and the polygrapher and I are great. I have so much admiration for him. And he passed the question. And I was like, it's still, I was like, there's something there. So call it wrong, call it whatever, but pass the polygraph on a question I thought he was being deceptive on.
Okay. That's the one here, because Surrey says, how do you detect a white lie? Because we're all given white lies. I'll take a rain check on that. And do you want to have lunch? Is a big one. Nobody ever wants to have lunch with anybody, do they? How do you detect it? What is a white lie and how do you detect it?
All right. So I love this question because there's no such thing, right? I always tell people lies aren't tangible and they can't have color. A lie is a lie. So if I tell you, you look amazing today, Humphrey, and I love your background, right? And if I truly don't, don't, right? People are like, oh, it's just a little white lie. No, it's a lie. It's just a lie. So we lie for different reasons, to save face, to make other people feel good. So there's different reasons as to why we lie, but they're all lies. And yes, you can detect the embellishment, the false statement, the lying by distortion, and lying by omission.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that gets us into the sort of, the civilian thing again from David. Do people lie more via written medium or face to face? Probably yes, but how can we tell? How can we tell when my son might be on drugs, or my boss is lying? How do we tell these things?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Come to my classes. No, really quick, right? So I always like to say, if you ask somebody a question and they can't answer it, you got a red flag, or they refuse to answer it. You have a red flag. If you do what Lance Armstrong just did, and you are not congruent with your body language and your spoken language in your answers, because naturally we want to be in sync. If that is not in sync, you got another red flag. If your gut says, there's something interesting here, I don't believe or I don't trust, go with your gut feeling, because believe it or not, your gut has 1 billion brain cells in it. I know it sounds disgusting, more so than your brain. So your gut's picking up on a nonverbal or something they said. Now, because you haven't been trained in it, you just don't know what to call it. But 9 times out of 10, you're seeing what I'm seeing. I just know how to label it, how to analyze it, how to take it a level deeper. And you're like, I don't really know what it is, but I don't trust. Your gut is pretty good detector.
So is it a different thing that, say, if your spouse is cheating on you, you're going to get a different look to if the car salesman is trying to sell you a dud car? Or is it all the same stuff we're looking for?
So there's universal indicators, and then there's cultural indicators. There's also when you deal with personal connections with people, and that level of emotion and intensity can throw you off. We have our own bias lens that can throw us off in our analysis, but the indicators for deception are pretty much the same. So if I ask Putin a question and he refuses to answer, if I ask my husband a question and he refuses to answer, they're both red flags.
Okay. So, and even for the white lie, I mean, if I said to somebody, you really don't want to have lunch with me, so don't say it, he's going to sort of get all. Kate Hall asks a really interesting question here. Memory can be imperfect and gradually change with time. That lie may therefore be inadvertent. What happens then?
So there's 2 types of memory, right? We have episodic and semantic, and you cannot create a lie out of nothing. It actually comes from your memory. It comes from semantic memory, because episodic's your autobiographical. And if you ask me, Lena, what did you do last night? And I tell you what I did, it's 100% legit and being truthful. And 2 weeks go by. Lena, what did you do that night? Well, a little bit of that memory may have trailed off. So now I have to stop and think. And then let's say 2 months go by and you ask me what I did. Now I really have to think. And because when we remember an event, we don't remember it in a timeline like a movie. We remember in chunks. And every time I have to recall what I did last night, I got to put all the pieces together like a puzzle. And over time, some of those pieces, they're gone. They're not coming back, right? And so I struggle to remember it. And people are like, oh, you're struggling to think of what you did. You must be lying. No, I'm trying to remember it. But because our memory, little bits of our memory drop off over time, it's harder to put together the puzzle to tell you.
And the hormone release would be different then, because you're not tackling all those sort of things that you hear. Emma says, is it that serial liars who never get found out have a higher degree of intelligence? We know that our Prime Minister is a very intelligent man. So.
Oh, I can't answer that. I don't know.
You don't know. You never thought this guy's very smart and that sort of.
I don't associate lying with being smart, but yeah, that's just me personally.
And staying with those, or getting back briefly to those illegal COVID parties that are so much part of our politics here.
Yes.
And also over in the States, you had that whole fake news thing that goes backwards and forwards. Nobody quite knows what to believe anymore, do they?
No. That's why I can't watch the news. It frustrates me.
Because you can see that everybody's lying on it.
Yeah, and I want to jump in the TV set and take over the interview. There was like for Kate, over in here, we had Hillary Clinton when the whole issue about wiping the servers clean and all of that. There was one interview, and I show it in my classes. And listen, I got nothing against people, but I'm going to show when I know people are lying. And man, oh man, it just infuriates me because she's asked the same question over and over. And she even gets to a point like where she tries to make a joke out of it and say, oh, like with a cloth, come on. If you're a politician, you are, you have stature, you have a reputation, and that's how you're going to answer this question about a very serious issue? No.
That makes you angry. I'm going to go on to the third pillar of your life in just 1 second, but Susan Krantz, I like this question a lot. Does your knowledge and expertise interfere with your personal relationships?
I get asked that a lot. So if I know that there's people close to me that are lying to me, I have to pick and choose my battles, right? If it's to make me feel good, I'll let it go. If it's to avoid an argument, I'll let it go. But if it's just downright hurtful, then I'm going to address it.
Yeah. And have you lost friends or relationships because of it?
No,
or is it the right thing to do, you think?
Yeah. And there have been some, if they're out of my life, we like to say off my bus, they're off my bus for a reason.
Yeah.
You're just not a positive person that I want in my life.
Yeah. Now I just want to, because we're running out of time. It's just going woof like that. But you began as an archaeologist. You do the interrogation thing, and I put up there in the chat, everybody, the Congruency Group's website, so you can look. Do you have online courses and that sort of thing as well that people can have a look at? And if you want to know who's lying to you, go check that out. Yeah. But you're also moving on to the world of animals, aren't you? In a horse farm, I think.
Oh my God.
So my first question to you is: are animals more honest than humans?
Oh, that's a good question. I never thought of an animal being honest. So here's what I do know. Animals are their emotions, right? They act immediately upon whatever it is. Humans, we think about things. We have that ability to, before I act, let me think, let me assess, let me do this, lie, let me not be true. Animals don't do that. They don't think of how to act. They just act and react, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. So would they be more honest? Yeah, because they're not going, oh, wait a minute. Should I lick my owner and pretend I'm happy? No, if it's whatever that feeling is or what's happening in their brain, they do it. But humans, we stop, we think about it, we analyze it.
Okay, so, and just to give us a cap, you're going to run or get involved in a horse farm? Just tell us what it is.
Yeah, so I think my dad has a clever trick to try to get me back to Rhode Island, which I'm dying to get back to one day. I love my Rhode Island. And so he bought a horse farm. There's no horses on it yet. And he's owned it now for 3 years. And every time we go home, it is a huge indoor arena. I bring my dog, she runs around it. I'm like, one day, Bandit, you're going to have horses to play with. We don't know when that's coming, but... Yeah, so it's a running joke that we have this beautiful horse farm with no horses.
No horses. So you're going to have to go out and look up for some honest horses. I'm just going to repeat now your three things, of which one is a lie. Stephanie is collating them all, and then we're going to go to what's coming up next, and then we're going to get a result. So this is it. I once broke someone's jaw. During COVID, you took started a PhD program in psychology, and you used to feed grapes to a red panda. One of those is a lie. A lot of you have put in your answers to that, 1, 2, and 3. Any of you haven't, put it in, and we'll find out what it is. Suri says there's a lot of pseudo profound BS around with social media these days. How does one get around it to get to reality?
Oh, that's a good question. When you figure it out, please let me know. It's so difficult. God, we're getting bombarded, and sometimes we don't have an avenue to fact check what's coming in. That's the hard part.
Yeah, that's it. Stay with us, Lena, because I'm just going to tell our audience what is coming up on Goldster Inside Story, and then we're going to come back with a couple more questions to nail you down. Tomorrow, a very timely book club. We're going to discuss face to face. This is where you can all join in. The Hunt for Red October by Tom Clancy. I think I have it here. If my fake lying background tells me. The Hunt for Red October. That's the chase for a rogue Soviet submarine at the height of the Cold War. The Russians are back again. And on Thursday, March 3rd, Lucinda is with Nicola Bowman, and she founded Persephone Books, which publishes neglected fiction and nonfiction, mostly by women writers and mostly in the mid-20th century. The name Persephone was chosen as a symbol of female creativity, as well as of new beginnings, the daughter of Zeus. And it had a runaway success with the reprint of Miss Pettigrew Lies for a Day, which is going to be a Goldster Book of the Month in May, published in 1938. And on Friday, March the 4th, that's next week, I'm with Carol Walker, Times radio presenter and a former BBC political correspondent and author of, here it is, talking about lying, Lobby Life. There we go, Lobby Life. And that goes behind the scenes of how our political system operates. I don't know if we should have had you on before that, Lena. The good guys, the bad guys, the deal makers, the liars, and those that go to the illegal parties. That's next Friday. How exactly does our democracy work? Now we have 3 correct answers. We have, of which one was drawn out of that. The PhD is the winner. That was the lie. And Trish Almond was plucked out of the hat as the winner of that, who's going to email team at Goldster and got 3 correct answers. I wonder if most were correct or most were not. Maybe Stephanie could give us a rough idea of that, whether most of them got it right and most of them didn't. Just a question before we go, since we've got Ukraine happening, Russia back again, and you experience was the war on terror mainly. Is it different when you do with what we call non-state players, which are like terrorists following a cause, and state players, which is like, a soldier has been arrested and he's works for an army and obeys his governments. Is it a different sort of technique?
The techniques are the same. You still have to get to know the person. You're still thinking rapport. Their information is different. Maybe their motivations are different as well. So I am huge on discovering motivations and intent for wanting to tell me the truth, and also for what they did, right? So motivations could be a little different. Maybe it's ideological over here, and then maybe it's I don't know, pride or ego over here. Whatever it is, the techniques are the same.
And then in the war movies that we've all watched, and the guy gets captured and he says, I'm going to give you my name, rank, and serial number, which is on the Geneva Convention. So what happens then?
You build rapport, and all of a sudden they start to like you and they enjoy being with you, and then they trust you, and you get a lot of information. That's what happens.
Interesting. And do you feel your husband's a colonel in the Marine Corps? I think that's right. And I'm seeing behind you those medals. Tell us what they're for, just before you leave us.
Those are mine.
Yeah.
Right. Those are mine. But everybody that comes into my office assumes they're his. And when they find out they're mine, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. But my husband put that together for me. And he gave me, so he gave me the shout outs.
And do you feel, Lena, I mean, I think when you said the archaeology, it wasn't quite for you, and you went and did this. Now you're teaching this, to civilians, really in congruence. But do you feel, Ukraine, Russia, this is something I want to be involved in?
It depends what my involvement would be.
If they asked you to go and, interrogate Russian prisoners or people that, and to sort of try to stop this war, would you be off in a flash?
I would be any chance to go find the truth. I'm off in a flash. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just what I love to do. I feel that because I have these superpowers, we call them, it's my duty to do it. So yes.
Yeah. That's it. All right. Well,
Humphrey, can I add one quick little thing for the people who got my lie right? So there's a reason, and I want people to know why the PhD was wrong. Both the other two truthfuls, I said in past tense, but here's what I said about the PhD. I decided during COVID, I decided to start a PhD program, but I never told you I did. So we call that intent with no action. I told you I decided to, but I never said I did. And so that's why that one's the lie.
Repeat them. We've got a minute left. Repeat them
Yeah.
again with the body language you used and see if people can detect.
So here's the fight. My body language is the same, right? So I said, okay, I once broke somebody's jaw with a roundhouse kick. That was true. Now I feel terrible about it. I still, to this day, the poor guy, he disappeared from the dojo for weeks. He came back. He's like, you broke my jaw. And I'm like, what? I felt awful, right? So you may see a little bit of like maybe balling up or negativity or something, because I still to this day feel bad. Number two, I said, during COVID, I decided, and I'm still shaking my head, so you could be thrown off. I decided to start a PhD program. I always wanted to start a PhD program. I haven't. And I said I decided to. I never said I did, because I should have said during COVID, I started, past tense, a PhD program, but I didn't. I said I decided to start, which is not, and wrong verb tense and intent, no action. On the third one, I used to feed, right, red grapes to a panda, use past tense. Number one and number two were in the past tense, did them. That was it. And number three was intent, no action, and present tense.
If you, and Suri says, this is quite a nuanced point. If you decided to in your head, then it can be true, even if you didn't do it. So did you ever almost,
No,
I mean, how does that work?
So I never decided, right? Because in my head, I would still have to decide to take the PhD program. I never did. I never decided that during COVID. Nope.
Very quickly, the 4 secrets of being a good liar. Reel them off for us, and then we're saying goodbye.
Gosh, I can't remember. I will tell you, number one, believe your lie. Number two, don't get nervous. Number three, don't avoid answering a question. And number four, be congruent with your body language and your language. But I will tell you this, it's going to be super hard to do all of that. If you're lying, you're going to fail in one of those. Even I do.
That's brilliant. The 4 secrets to being a good liar. The magnificent, the brave, and the dogged Lena Sisco. Follow her on Twitter at Lena Sisco. That's with an S. Get in touch at thecongruencygroup.com. Download your lying from Amazon or wherever you want to do, and check out spyx.com, which I think we put up there, which is that sort of umbrella group that you're part of. It represents Lena and others on your inside story, behind the scenes world and what you come from. Discover your inner hero. Until tomorrow with Hunt for Red October, thank you so much, Lena. Thank you for our team at Goldster. Thank you all for your questions and for your guesses on the lying and your comments. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon. Keep an eye and thoughts on Ukraine. Stay involved, stay active, and above all, stay safe. Bye. Thanks, Lena. Bye.